Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Building Your Iconic Life. We're here with Alundas Havens, and stay tuned. This one's going to be hot, everybody.
I came from the mud. There's dirt on my hands.
Welcome to Build an Iconic Life podcast. I'm your host, Chris Whitehead, and this podcast is dedicated to help you build a life with zero regrets by focusing on how you have everything you need to stand up, stand out, and live life on your terms. Let's dive right in. Hey, Alundas, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing well, brother, and thank you again. It's an honor to be here, brother.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're here. So in order to start this thing off right, I just want to let everybody know what it is you're doing now, and then we're going to dive into your backstory. So what are you doing currently?
Absolutely, brother. So currently I have two podcasts. One it's the Winner's Paradigm, focuses on recalibrating people's mindsets to really helping them on their journey for whatever they're facing. You know, I talk about how I grew up, some of the people I hung out with, even getting into the Marine Corps and trying to do better, but still using these same tendencies, attracting the wrong people because that's who I was at the time. And then I just recently started a second podcast for my business, Alpha Influence Media, with my partner, Zach Babcock. And it's about building dominant brands as the podcast. So we're going to get people on really to give actionable steps. Because for me, I was my own boss in 1920 in the Marine Corps, but that is different, you know, when you're running it in there, and it's one of the biggest businesses in the world, but on paper it was nothing, you know. So when I went out into the civilian sector and I started trying to get jobs, it's like, oh, we could put you in an entry-level sales position. So Everything that I've learned has came through podcasting, reading books, conversations, Facebook friends. So that's what I wanted to do with the podcast, was put it there, because we have a high ticket service. What we do is we're a podcast booking agency. So we book you on other podcasts that resonate with your message, get your ideal guests, run ad campaigns. So if you're on Spotify, you can click on it, go to your website, professional graphics, professional voiceover artist. And then what we're going to do next is we're going to chop these interviews up into reels, TikToks for people to be able to put out there. Because it's one of those things, you know, you're either doing it for your business or you're not doing it at all. So it makes it a lot easier when we're giving the extra value to people and saying, hey, man, we'll come on your show and then we'll chop it up for free so you can be able to share this too. So different conversation, you know, if I want you to share something, and then I have a killer video to be able to give you.
Yeah, man. And it's really important too. And for people that aren't in the know, podcasting has become really hot. But the statistics is that most people don't get past about number 7. It's like only 1% of the crowd actually sees it through. And it's a huge travesty, because it's one of the best ways to build know, like, trust with people, by giving value. And what people also don't understand, that you and I both do, dude, you get to meet some of the most amazing people in the world. You get to dive into their stories. You get to truly network with people, and opportunity continues to grow bigger and bigger and bigger. So I 100% support what you do. And, you know, I know Zach Babcock personally. He's a good friend of mine. And you guys doing this stuff together, he has proven the results for his clients over and over and over again. One of the things that struck me, though, is that even though you were your own boss, you were inside of an institution. And, you know, it's a very rigid institution, and rightfully so. But when you went out on your own, brother, that was like throwing you into the ocean. Like, it's deep, it's wide, there's no land in sight, and you have to figure out how to take everything that you've learned up into that point and make something of it. So walk us through what it was like coming into the civilian world, because really that is the mindset from people that have been in service, which, by the way, thank you for your service. But once you come into this other mindset, which is the majority of the population, you have to change a lot of things about how you interact with other people, because the rules change. Tell us about some of those struggles you went through.
Absolutely, brother. And for me, tough right out the gate. So I wanted to be a lifer, but I tore all the cartilage on my right knee. And then from there, everything fell apart. I dislocated both shoulders 3-4 times, you know, back fell apart. So I was 20 when I first, you know, got hurt. And it was one of those where I powered through every single injury. And then I was on a promotion board going to get promoted when I got hurt. So they stripped that away. You're a bad Marine because I got injured. You're not healthy. You can't be able to be the best like you were. So I already had that ego. I had that chip on my shoulder. I was pissed with the Marine Corps because I was like, you guys, like, I whittled it down to my last 3 weeks. So it wasn't like, oh, I knew I was getting out. I was still holding on to that belief. I was going to run the 3 miles and try to stay in. Like, I was literally trying to force myself and hurt myself even more to tell myself, hey, this is what you can do. And it was tough. I went straight into home improvement sales, straight commission. So made 7 G's 1 month. And I was like, yeah, this is the greatest thing. Wife loves me. And then the next 2 months didn't make a dime, because they didn't change their price book. So I was selling everything outdated. And then 2, it was the fit for me. So I'm casual, I build on relationships. I'm good with people. I smile a lot. My old manager was an old school closer. I'm like, bro, I can't talk a million miles a minute because people are going to know that I'm BSing them, that I'm going through, that I'm making stuff up. Like, I want to know every single thing. I want to help people provide that value because that's how I work with people. And that's how it is. I open up about me and so forth. So did that at the same time, working on my business management degree. Me and the wife had miscarriage. I go on to work in a mortgage brokerage. We have a second miscarriage. I failed my mortgage brokerage exam 3 times. And that's where I was just like, am I stupid? Like, what the hell's wrong with me? Up until this point, besides like 2 classes, I never failed anything in life. In the Marine Corps, I did well. My schooling, I didn't do well in it just because it was about learning about aircraft and certain shit for aviation. And like, I didn't even do that in my normal job. So it was kind of funny. It's like, that was it. So even college, I was like, bro, I knocked this out the park. And then it comes to this test for mortgage and I can't do it. And that's where I started having a lot of problems there. I was really, when I was 16, more independent. I'd go home, do my chores every day, be with my friends. I wrestled year round. So like I was always doing something, pushing myself. My parents left me alone because if not, I was fighting with my stepdad. So it was one of those for me where I was already independent and then working at a mortgage brokerage with kids that are coming off mommy and daddy's couch, and we're all 22. So they think that I think like them. So they're like, yeah, if you don't have a Mercedes, you're not cool. And I'm like, bro, I don't want to do that. Like I got a mortgage. I'm trying to get a mortgage. We're getting a house at that time. I was like, we're trying to start a family. We have 3 dogs. Like I had all my ducks in a row, waking up at 4 a.m. to go to the gym. And it was one of those for me where it was like, bro, this isn't the fit for me. Like I can't just keep doing this over and over. And I also, had a drinking problem because I didn't process trauma from when I was younger, as well as, when I got in the Marine Corps, high stress environments. So one of those, like you're literally just screaming at each other all the time. They want you to be like that, heads on a swivel. It's good to be, but if you don't decompress, and that was me, I didn't decompress. I was drinking every day. And then it was, definitely being at that point, hey, I don't want to do this. Good thing is like throughout that process of transitioning, I actually was in Zach's group. So that's how it originally started, is hit one of his guys, Paul Tokazulu, commented on one of my posts I put one day. And I was like, hey, man, you're very inspiring. Like, I just want to say thank you. Like, I'm terrified going through this because now I'm in an interview and I'm talking to people and they're like, oh, so you have tangible skills, you can brief in front of people, but it doesn't look like you have a degree, it doesn't look like you have more experience than 4 years. And then now it's like, they're putting me into a box saying that I'm less of what I am. And I'm like, you know what, I can do well in sales, but I want to be in a leadership position. Like there's other things I would like to be doing. And they're like, well, it's performance derivative. And if you do well, then you can be a manager. And I'm like, you know what? All right. So it was one of those for me where I was in these places that just didn't fit me, and even went on to help other veterans with VA claims. And that's where, good thing Zach was there for me because I'm working 60, 80 hours, holding the baby because my nanny moved to Minnesota. So holding the baby, making sales calls, and still going to school, figuring everything out I can do for myself. I tell the job, hey, here's my corrective action plan. This is how I'm going to be able to make it here. In my head, I was like, I started a podcast. So I'm like, I got all the answers, and the job comes at me sideways. Hey, is this really what you want to do? Is your heart still here? I know you're one of our top guys, but you definitely can get a promotion to make more, but maybe it's 100 hours. And I was just like, you're insane. There's no way I'm working 100 hours a week. And it's even tougher space helping veterans because Vietnam era was terrible, when they got out, the way that they were treated. So every day I'm fired up too, because I'm like, you know what, I went through this in the Marine Corps, getting hurt, trying to move on. So that's really where the inner work happened, and having that good team pulled me through it.
You said 2 things, and I'm actually listening to an audio book right now, which is really good. I'm going to pull it up for reference. It's called To Be a Man, A Guide to True Masculine Power. And it's by Robert Augustus Masters, PhD. And one of the things that it talks about is how empowering it is to learn to be vulnerable. And we as men are taught not to be vulnerable. And dude, I've struggled with this like you have, I'm sure, of like what's too much, what's not enough, not to mention literal reactions to things. And one of the things that he said in the book, which you alluded to, was the military teaches you how to desensitize the enemy. I mean, otherwise, it's kind of hard to end their life when you see them as a human. The downside of that, and it makes sense why they can't do this, but the downside of that is when you have to reintegrate so that you can see a civilian as not a threat, but as someone that you, dude, that is a chasm that you had to overcome that many veterans can't, because they didn't know. That's what they were young, and they're already boys. They already have a lot of testosterone. They're already aggressive, and we're turning that anger and giving permission for that aggression, and it just keeps spiraling deeper and deeper out of control. And it's something that I want you to touch on, because I know that you have a heart for it. Hell, you have a business about it. And the second thing that you touched on, which is imperative to me, when I was 24 years old, 22, I was the number one salesman in a company called Radio Shack. I don't even know if they're still available right now, on in the Eastern region. And dude, I didn't have to do much to be the number one salesman in the Eastern region other than smile a lot and take more orders than everybody else. I worked my ass off, you know, but that allowed me to become a manager. And I went from working 42 hours a week to immediately working 100 hours a week as a manager of like the worst store in the area. And that's how they did everything back then. I mean, we're going to give you the worst one mostly because you don't have to do much and it's going to become better, and you start building a track record. But bro, that 100 hours a week, man, like it wasn't physical work. But it was wake up, go to work, come home, eat, go to sleep, wake up, go to work. And it was like 6-7 days a week. And that was when, for me, somebody came with a multi-level marketing opportunity called Amway at the time. I was in North Carolina. And bro, that sounded a whole lot better than working 100 hours a week. Now, imagine this, bro. That was back in 1997. There was no internet. There was no opportunity. Entrepreneurism was not something that was lifted up at all. And I struggled for decades. I've been in business 25 years. The first 20 were hard, mainly because I didn't have a direction. I didn't have podcasts. I mean, there were radios, there were ads, there were yellow pages, there were, those things. But here's what's crazier. That sounds like, oh, you must have had it tough. Well, I did. But you know what I also didn't have? 1,437,000 distractions running at me, all telling me that this is the way to become successful. I know for your generation, it's even tougher because we're going through evolution right now. People, women are coming into power, which I believe in. People of color are coming into power. America is becoming more of a global ideal instead of a country. There's a whole bunch that has to be navigated, not to mention if you say the wrong thing in the wrong way to the wrong person, you will be canceled. We've seen people on social media literally for no reason other than people don't like them. They just cancel them off the internet. I mean, that's a kiss of death. Tell me, and it doesn't, if you want to give a little bit of your backstory, if you want to give a lot, that's fine. But tell me this confusing time that you went through and the little things that you did in the past that made you ready to see the opportunity, and also giving yourself permission to do it, and what that felt like as you went through this process of carving out a niche that was all you.
So I'm gonna unpack a lot, brother, because I feel
good.
like if I tell you the whole story, you're gonna understand and be like, all right, this makes sense. So I'm from Fresno, California originally. Parents 1921 when they had me. So they were both alcoholics. My mom didn't drink as heavy because when I was 4, I told her you're being alcoholic like my dad, and he would get real abusive. They're both narcissists. So it was very difficult. They refracted, reframed everything to me, and you're the problem in this, So it was one of those type deals. So 4 years old, I told my mom, uh, hey, you're starting to drink like my dad. She toned it down, but it was always, drinking every single day, partying on weekends. So it was one of those, seen a lot of things. My dad, partier, hustler. That's where I get my drive from. You know what I mean? Is he taught me how to be a hustler. He didn't teach me how to be a little boy, 5 years old, running the house, girls coming in and out, partying all the time, them doing drugs and shit. And it was just one of those, like, he taught me these things. So I love the flashy materialistic things because I was like, my dad's a baller, but that's what he taught me to be. And then I had a stepdad that was racist. He army vet, but said just these crazy outlandish things sometimes, and didn't let me express myself. So if I got a design in my hair, you're a fucking hoodlum, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, am I a reflection of your parenting? So if I go out like this, he's like, oh, well, you got to dress nice because of where we live and whatever. And it was one of those things for me where it was like, bro, I get messed with wherever I go because in Fresno, a little bit different. People are more hotheads. They fight, and even moving into the nicer areas, it was one of those for me to where it was like, we go to a nicer area. I don't have the nice clothes. I don't have all that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm already put into a position. So the people I hung out with were like literally from junior high. When I got into high school, they're the ones slanging, doing shit. So I'm the middleman. I'm directing people to them. That's where that hustler in me came out, where I was like, I'm not going to get dirty, but I'm going to make sure, like, okay, if these people are smoking, I'm going to go to hey, man, who wants to go to the store? Who wants some chips? I don't want to go to the store. Cool. Give me $20. I go to the store. I get you guys food. I come back. You have your stuff. You might not get a Gatorade. Yeah, man. So it was like learning how to talk to people on that level. But really, I used to fist fight my dad because my dad was abusive to his wife and to me. And he came off real aggressive, you know what I mean? So he was real macho. So that was me. I wasn't the strongest of the bunch. I just had the heart and got my ass handed to me a couple of times. But it was just the fact of like, you have to stand up for yourself. And I was so irritated with getting beat up by my dad, my stepdad saying crazy shit. Or, for me, it was like learning about myself because I didn't grow up with the black side of my family. So I grew up with the Mexican side. So definitely even worse, when I'm out in public because I'm with all my Mexican friends and some dudes are like, oh, you're hanging out with them. And it was one of those, now I'm fighting, acting stupid again. Had another cousin that really grew up with me throughout that whole process. And he ended up getting strung out on meth. So he used to send people after me because he didn't pay his debts or whatever it was. And then he started gangbanging, and two of my good buddies were from a different clique, and they came at me and tried to jump me. And they're like, hey, man, your cousin's claiming this. What's up? And I'm like, hey, whatever you guys got to do, handle it. But I'm not in that because, I'm not about that. I was like, I just kick it here and I'm trying to make money and live good. So it was one of those things for me where I already knew all these things were. Like I said, when I was 16, I would go to a home every day, do my chores. I would leave to go to my friends' houses. And that really was it for me. Ended up getting in a fight with my stepdad before I left because one day he was talking about hating people from one part of the world. And he asked me who I hate. And I said, everyone, it's equality. I don't give a shit who you are. We can dish it out. And so end up getting kicked out, get back in, call my recruiter, hey, man, I need to leave. And then on boot leave, when I was home, my stepdad, we had a party at the house and my stepdad was just off that night. So I knew something was going on. My wrestling coach was there, which he used to see me and my dad get in verbal fights after I lose wrestling matches because my dad was the David Goggins type, like, you fucking suck, and screaming. So for me, like, that inner dialogue is something I'm always, I know how to switch on and off, and that's why I'm effective and able to do things. And you're not going to beat me type mentality. But it was demoralizing in public, you know what I mean? Because my dad's just screaming at me, you're this or that. So the wrestling coach was always there. He's at the party that night. He comes up to me, hey, man, I want to go use the restroom. The only one that's open is my mom's restroom. So he walks down the hall. My stepdad follows him, and I'm like, hey, man, got you a bottle of Jack. Are you going to drink it? He's like, no. I see him sprint to the room. I hear 45, cocks back, shoots within a centimeter of my coach's face. And then they get out through the house. I throw the coach in a car to get him out of there. The stepdad's holding the 45 like at the door, trying to yell at me. And then I'm on the phone with the operator. They're like being stupid with me. You can get in trouble for not cooperating. I'm like, I've told you everything. SWAT team comes up, helicopter over the house, walks my brother and sister out. And then I just remember walking by the car, and that's where, like, I started getting frustrated. You know what I mean? I almost lost it twice that day. First, the cops get there. They're like, there's so much alcohol in the house. And I was only 18. So you can get arrested. I was like, fuck you. Arrest me then. Like, how am I getting in trouble for alcohol I didn't even buy? And then the second portion, walking by the cop car, and my stepdad's like, he's Mexican. I don't know about this dude. He could have had a piece. He could have had a gun. And I was just like, dude. And the cop looks at me, and I'm like, this dude's a correction officer, right? I was like, the guy he almost shot's a correctional officer. So you really think correctional officers are going to have a gun in a house like this? And they were like, oh, so it was one thing that I battled because my stepdad kept calling me and hey, son, I'm sorry. And then when I went to school, the schoolhouse, one of my cousins that I was telling about, he got stabbed 9 times. So it was really like a big slap in the face. And throughout that process, I had 4 good friends that died. So, really getting bad places because I just couldn't process things. I didn't want to get close with people because they can die. And for me, didn't really click, got to the Marine Corps, start dating some other hood chick in San Diego. And now I'm hanging out somewhere else, doing dumb shit. Like I said, I wasn't fighting again where I didn't want to be. And then really the clicker was just suppressing the emotions, drinking heavy, came back from deployment. And that's where, I was screaming at everybody because like you said, about the 100 hours, that's how deployment was for me. I'd work 16, 18-hour days. I would go home because I was out in Kuwait. So I'd go home, go to the gym for 2 hours, sleep for 2 hours or 4 hours a night, and then back at it the next day. You know what I mean? And when I came home, it was fucking a rude awakening because everyone has excuses. Everyone keeps saying why they can't do something, or you ask them why they're not physically fit. Oh man, I just don't have time. Like, bro, I get up at 3 a.m. What are you talking about? You don't have time. Like, you can make time, you can figure it out, but it's not the way people think. So I became the problem because I was projecting on everyone. And it wasn't that I wanted to, it was just like I was so used to. And that's why I did get in the military is I was getting yelled at by my parents and I can channel it, so I'm getting screamed at. And I'm like, hey man, you want to get some ice cream right after? And they're looking at me like, what? And I'm laughing it off. And they're like, this guy just doesn't take anything serious. But it was me shutting down. So came home, and that's where some of that work started happening was just really was going off on everybody all the time and like getting pissed off. And it was just like, you can't help yourself. Why am I going to help you? And it went into like, hey, maybe we can try this leadership thing a completely different way. Because me screaming at people and always picking the fight, like, did not do anything when it came to accomplishing the goal of helping people.
Not that everybody's had your exact experience for sure, but I think people can relate, especially as a young person, just feeling completely defeated, even though you're trying to do the right thing. And I know I went through it, especially with the anger. Number one, I want everybody to know that anger is okay. It's a feeling. It's an emotion. Aggression, on the other hand, is a choice. And we have to learn that it's okay to be angry and not react with aggression, especially when all we've seen is aggression. And there are a lot of ways that aggression come. Unfortunately, yours came in the physical form, but there are a lot of people that experience that through passive aggressiveness, emotional abandonment, sarcasm. I could just go on down the list of how that aggression comes out of other people. And one of the biggest tragedies in life is when I see young people being treated that way. And then, I'm old enough now that now I can see them in their 20s and 30s and how they've become the very thing that they most despised. And I don't judge people most of the time. I try really hard because I've been there. I've done that. For you, you have this rude awakening. You can't be in the military anymore. You're trying to take this mortgage exam and you're failing for the first time at something that you're really putting your heart and soul into. What are some of the things that started to show up that became lifelines, but you didn't really see them as that at the time? Because what I'm gathering so far, man, the negative things that happened to you had a positive side too. You were able to switch on the mentality when you had to, made you a dog, in the mud. Like, I'm just going to do what I got to do. And I think that's beautiful. But you also must have had a dream, dude, to have a family, to live I'm not talking about religiosity here, but to live a righteous life that you defined. Dude, it's one of the hardest things on the planet for people to do. That's why there's so many podcasts and so many personal development coaches, and it's $1 billion industry and all this stuff. But what I've experienced along the way is oftentimes the blessing comes shrouded to almost test you to see it. Do you really want that? Because you're going to have to look at it different. And it's the process of you looking at it different that is the Rocky Balboa getting back up. Doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down, it's you getting back up because you're choosing to see it different. Talk about some of those aha moments or some of those people or opportunities that showed up that didn't seem like opportunities, but you were able to turn that into, this is my dream, this is my focus and where I'm going with this?
So I would say two early things. So first one, knowing my audience. Um, I had to learn pretty quick at a young age, like who I'm speaking to. So and good things, you know what I mean? Like, yes, I did say my stepdad, and he would say racist things, and I would get upset with him, but still the same dude that took me fishing, you know, took the time, didn't teach me how to work on cars because I was impatient, but we would do the fishing and stuff like that. So it was like I went into those things. So I knew how to act, knew how to be polite, knew how to do
You
that.
knew how to be a chameleon.
Exactly. So when it would get in those situations, or I'd be with friends and we would be in a bad area, or we would be doing some dumb shit, it would be like, all right, I know how to be able to talk to get through this. So that was kind of my thing, was knowing when to be able to use that level of power and when to act scared, you know, when to be the tough guy. Like I just knew how to read situations from a young age, you know, if the parents are drinking or that. Two, I would say, you know, everyone always looked at me as a leader, and I didn't look at myself that way. I'll tell you, that's the craziest thing is like when I turned 21, my dad was yelling at me one day, actually on my birthday. We got into it because he was talking about when he was a kid, and he was talking about, for instance, his cousins would make them fight until they can, if they would win, they can leave the house. And I was like, well, it was a little bit different for me because it would be, hey, your cousin's picking on you, better go kick his ass. If you don't kick his ass, I'm gonna kick your ass. I go kick my cousin's ass. I get my ass kicked by my dad for beating my cousin's ass and embarrassing him. So it was one of those where like it was a different form, and it was learning that of like the way he think. And he's like, you're the one who's good. You had everything good to you. You know, you're the one that everything came naturally to you. I'm like, you know, I'm an introvert, right? And I was like, I really can't click with people. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, I can be that extroverted person at a party. Hey man, what's up? But I just start getting depressed. I was like, I hate talking surface level. They're talking about, oh, you're a Cowboy fan, and then all I do is talk about Cowboys with you. Like, I want to know, you like the Cowboys, you grew up here, this is what you did. So that's how like podcasting helped me get into that of what I'm passionate about. But it was something for me like at a early age, like people thought that because I put on a front, I knew how to act in situations. You know, I knew how to be good or be doing, hanging out with people that were doing just dumb shit. And it was one of those, like, I didn't do it because I held myself to a standard in that. So it was really getting into the Marine Corps too. They initially were like, you're a leader, you're in charge, you know. So it was one of those where it was like, man, why does everyone keep saying that I'm the leader? And I don't even feel that way because I'm the one who, you know, got my ass kicked, wrestled for a year and a half when I first started, lost, didn't win anything, you know. So I was always the one proving myself doing that, always in the gym. So it was the things like people were seeing, and I didn't even see it in myself. So it was one of those. And then I would say three, excuse me. When I started podcasting, getting around Zach, like my fear was, oh, I'm going to get sued for the shit I say, because I say it blatantly. And it's not to discredit my parents at all. You know, they did a great job at some of the things, but I talk about things that actually molded me into who I am. And it's one of those where I was like, had this fear of like, oh, it's going to be this. You know, my mom has somebody listening literally to my podcast, and then she calls me and starts telling me shit, and she can't even do it herself. And it's like things that are true, but they don't want me to be able to be saying, you know. So it was definitely tough. And that's where I was saying that. And definitely, you know, our group worked with me. They're like, man, just be vulnerable. Like if you do say it, and if it's truthful, it's going to hurt sometimes for people, but it's not that you're just intentionally going out of your way to be like, oh, I'm going to hurt this person, hurt this person.
Right.
You're sharing it because you're teaching a message. And that was kind of my goal, you know. So I've been doing a better job now at jumping back and forth and talking about the good and the bad, because I don't just want to harp on that, but it's all the things that really mold you into who you are, because you may not even think about it. But one of the things, you know, when we talked about it, the military, how they get you to shut that switch off and then you're desensitized. Like I was desensitized to a lot of things. Like my family don't reach out to me. So when I'm working, bro, I'm zoned the fuck in. Like I'll go 6 months and I'm just doing what I'm doing. It's not that I don't love you. It's just like, bro, I'm dialed in at what I'm doing. I don't want to hear negativity. I started my business. You know, why are you starting your business? That's stupid. I'm like, well, I don't want to work for somebody forever, you know? And it was one of those for me where like, I just shut off. And it's one of those coping mechanisms because I was always doing that growing up, you know, been able to fit in the role, getting good grades, even though I did whatever I wanted, you know. And it was like, man, you really have to take that time to figure out, like, hey, you know, what is going on with you? How could you get better? Because in my case, I didn't do that. And that's where all those bad things started to happen. But getting more dialed in with the right people definitely changed that part.
I think you've done a lot more than you might recognize. And I think that's probably why a lot of people called you a leader. The question that's just begging to be asked, though, is what did you used to consider to be a leader, and what do you now consider to be a leader?
I love that question. And the reason why I love that question is it's the Book of the Five Rings, I believe. And it starts talking about the samurai and how they had their different ways of life for every single thing they do. So the military, they teach you about all those things about military history, core values, and that. And I love that stuff. My great grandfather, my dad's side, was a POW World War II. So I grew up with him. He died when I was like 7. So I remember him being crazy, but everybody in my family talked about him so highly, no matter like what he was going through, right? And it was one of those things for me, like when you dive into it, and I was looking at the way of the warrior and stuff like that. Like originally it was the macho man, the one that can beat anyone's ass any day, authoritative, the David Goggins type, screaming at people. That was what I thought a leader was. That's what I thought a man was. Is you got to be this macho alpha on alpha. You're always at the top, and then it evolved into you don't always have to be that. You can have that switch and you can turn it on. You can be able to talk to your audience that way, but you're not going to be able to talk to everybody because I had Marines that would literally crumble if I even raised my voice. So that took more out of me as a man because all I know is the scream, and now I got to be like, "Hey, brother, how you doing?" Effectively communicate, which was crazy. And even now, like, still working on those things. So it was really learning that, and learning everybody's different. And then the leader that has the grace, compassion, sticks to the core values. That's going to tell you how it is. Hey man, I failed. I did this, So in my case, like I messed up my relationship with my wife and we should have never got together because me and her were getting serious. We split up and then I went back to my ex, ended that there. She calls me, hey, had a miscarriage. And then, I was like taking care of her 2 weeks. And I was like, you know what, I can do this dad thing. I can do this, being a husband, taking care of her. And I was like, you know what, I think I'm wrong. Like I'm repeating the same things my dad's doing, girls coming in and out, me thinking partying's the way to go because everybody loves me when I'm drinking because I turn into the party animal. And it's like, but that's not me. You know what I mean? I like jamming on people on those deep levels. So luckily, the wife was there to help me, but it was all these things that like really got me into thinking, hey, what do we do as leaders? Like you got to be that transparent one. You got to be able to talk about the shit you did mess up on. What's the good? Yeah, you can be tough and you can be able to promote that message, but it takes more to be able to learn about that vulnerable side and to be sensitive with people and be like, you know what, I get you, bro. Like I get where you're coming from. And now it definitely makes sense, with a lot of people, the anger in kids and why it comes out, or why certain people think that way or whatever. So I was just really got into that. And then of course, having a daughter, I was afraid to have a son because I didn't want to be too hard on him like my dad was, but that's naturally how I think. And I also had a stepbrother that was really, really, really soft. So it was hard because he was just a gentle guy and my dad was just mean to him all the time. So I was one of those like, yeah, I don't want to be like that with my kid. I need to harden them up. And I'd say that's the most humbling thing is definitely like you have your own kids and then you start realizing like, it's not about that. It's not even, I had all this anger and all of a sudden we have the baby and it goes away. And I'm like, you know what? I am grateful for this moment. Like, it's not going to be that way. You got to put those reps in regardless.
Dude, several things. Number one, it is better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. The problem is that the warrior's skills are not necessarily useful in a garden if you want to grow a big one. So these other layers come in, and I'm just summarizing everything that I heard you say. And these other layers are really what make you a leader, because as men, we're naturally predisposed to being the warrior. Bro, we don't even have a chance. You didn't have a shot at it. Your stepdad and your dad made sure that you knew what being a man, in their opinion, was, and that's aggression. There's a time and a place for that. That's not really what we're going to talk about here. But I think what a real leader is, and what you alluded to, is that you take responsibility for anything in your surrounding at any given moment. If there's trash on the ground, if there's an old lady that needs help out of her car into the store, if somebody is harming another person, these are virtuous traits that a leader should take hold of. And I believe a leader becomes the greatest leader when they're not doing it to influence other people. They're doing it because they believe in this ethos. They believe in these core values. They live them regardless of the results that they get. And what happens is people start taking notice of it over time. And Many people don't do it that way just because it's not promoted and it's not sexy. But I've been known to say from stage, I don't care if you're the CEO or the janitor, your title has no bearing on me. I want to see who you are, because when the shit hits the fan, and I've had this experience and I know you have, bro, I'm always running into the fire. It's amazing at the 1,000 people that called me bro, that when I turn around at that moment and I take a step forward, they all take a step back. I'm not looking for the many. I'm looking for the few. And in order for those few to follow me, they have to 100% believe that I'm willing to die for my cause, or I'm willing to stand for my cause. And that's what I've heard you say throughout this process of you learning how to define leadership. Because, yeah, for whatever reason, bro, the universe, I call him God determined that you were going to be a leader. And then you took that very seriously. And I think the most serious place that we can take that are with the people that we brought into this world. So many people want to go be a leader out here while it's crumbling on the inside. Dude, I build things for a living in one of my companies. You can't build things on a bad foundation and expect the 5th floor to stay intact. And so I honor you for going through the struggle, man. And what I know is when we choose to do that, and this is part of the message of building an iconic life, there are at least 7,000 other people out here that are waiting to help you. They are looking for the kinds of people. And so you're another testimony that if you're willing to start your own fire, other people will come put sticks on it for you to help you do that. I want to keep this brief. I'll have you back on sometime. And yeah, I'd love to get on your podcast too, man. Tell people if they want to reach out to you, if they want to learn more about you, if they want to connect with you, what is the absolute best way for them to do that?
Best way to do that is social media, Alundas_Havens, or you can go to one of my podcasts, both of them, Winner's Paradigm and Alpha Influence Media podcasts, wherever you go for podcasts.
And I'll make sure that we have that connect information on our download page for our podcast. Brother, it's been amazing listening to your story. Thank you so much for standing in the gap, not only in the military, but in some ways, more importantly, when you got out, you chose to make your life better and you chose not to become bitter. And that makes us brothers, man. I'm serious, because this is a fight that we as a world are in now to educate the next generation of how to do it better than we did. And I applaud you for taking that vow seriously and continuing to move forward. And I'm going to share this out with everybody, and I hope people do connect with you, because I'm going to tell you something, everybody. He and Zach Babcock are doing with helping podcasters is a shortcut to getting your message out into the world in an effective way. Don't invest the time only to quit like the 99%. Instead, find the experts that have already proven the results, pay them what they're due, and allow them to help you spread your message far and wide. So until we talk again, Alundas, thank you again for being on the show. And everybody, we'll see you in the trenches. Take care.
I came from the mud. There's dirt on my hands. Strong like a tree. There's roots where I stand.
Hey, friend, if you enjoyed listening to this podcast, please leave a review and subscribe to catch future casts. If you really enjoyed this episode, make sure you share it so others can benefit from it as well. I'll see you in the trenches.